Hi, this is Joe Tate, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And away we go, off and running. Another edition, another week of the Sports Fix, another month, January in the books, February 1st. It's the first of the month. Here we go. Sports Fix on the air. Thanks to you guys for joining us. And Dan Wismar is going to join us as well here in just a little bit, as we do here on Mondays. We're going to have some fun kicking off the month. We've got a big game coming up this weekend. What do they call it? The Super Bowl. We've got one of those coming up. We're going to talk all about Denver and Carolina. Dan Wismar and I will get into that as well. So much more to talk about. The Cavaliers picking up the tempo. We'll get into that. I'll tell you what. Well, I'll just set the stage here. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But regardless, and last week, I got a lot of feedback from you guys about the episode we did right after David Blatt got fired. A lot of people liked where we were coming from with that. I actually got more feedback from that than I have in the last few weeks. And let me just start with this, and then we'll get into it more once Dan gets on the show. I'm definitely one of those people that feels David Blatt was definitely caught up in some circumstances, and he didn't do himself any favors either. But none of that matters with what I'm going to say here. I will say this: you look at how the Cavs have played in the week past, and I no doubt go back to what Dan and I mentioned last week when we said that when you look at the first game, especially because it took them a minute. That first game, they got trounced, the Cavaliers, after David Blatt was switched out for Tyronn Lue. Right after that, it would look okay, because you said the natural instinct was, okay, these guys are going to try a little harder. They're going to flip that switch because you want to make it look like, yes, indeed, the problem was what was going on, and now we've got things moving in a cohesive direction. And they didn't do that right away, but they've done it since. So, you know what, regardless of what you think, and what I'm going to say here is kind of, I guess, a backhanded just reality of the way things are. We live in an era where, in the NBA particularly, they are the most powerful group of players in all of sports. They are the product. In every sport they are, but in no sport, are the group of players more powerful than they are in the NBA. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So, yes, I absolutely believe that there was some collusion. This was clearly a team that wasn't happy with the direction of things under their coach. I think that's maybe it's a foregone error to say, hey, you gotta deal with the cards you're dealt. But I guess you don't in today's NBA, because they didn't, and they found a way to get a new set of cards dealt. That being said, they're playing at a much different tempo, and they're playing and they're giving a better effort than they had, particularly at certain times throughout the season. That doesn't mean anything about David Blatt. It doesn't mean in the slightest way that David Blatt did not get kind of shafted his way out of Cleveland, and I will stick to that belief. But it's clear as day to me that the players got what they wanted, and they're showing results of it. I'm not giving any credit, really, to Tyronn Lue. I mean, by the way, he clearly was rubbed the wrong way last week. You guys wouldn't know this, but the media would. Thursday or Friday of last week, all the media, myself included, we got an email from the Cavaliers asking us to please respectfully, those who hadn't yet begun pronouncing the Cavaliers' new head coach's name the right way. Clearly, there had been an issue with a lot of people using his name the wrong way. So they actually sent out a phonetic pronunciation, like you get in the dictionary, of Tyronn Lue. Clearly, people were emphasizing the Ty and the Ron and separating the emphasis on the syllables. And it's Tyronn Lue, but the Cavaliers sent out a phonetic spelling just to make sure. But regardless, I'm not really giving a lot of. I'm not one of these people, right? I've seen articles. I've seen Pluto and Livy and all the guys in the Plain Dealer writing articles today, as my man Bruce would say, building a statue to Lue. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's that the players got the coach that they wanted. They've got the atmosphere that they wanted. It doesn't mean that they're going to run all over him. It's just plain and simple. The personalities didn't mix. And for that, I will say David Griffin read his locker room correctly. That you can admit. Whether 100%, I feel that David Blatt has a bright future in this league. He will go somewhere else and coach somewhere else. And right now he's got a few $1 million to pad his bad time and make himself feel a little bit better. But regardless if he was ramrodded out by a group of players that didn't like him, David Griffin did read his locker room correctly, because there is most definitely a difference in the way the players are reacting. It's not to the coach, and I'm not going to sit here and give credit, because I don't. That same coach was devising the same defense. He was the assistant head coach. If you think that he just stood by and let David Blatt do things, he was as much a part of it as anybody else, even though David Blatt had the final authority. But they like Tyronn Lue more. I just did it myself. Tyronn Lue, they like him more. I had it in my head, and then I went ahead and made that same Freudian slip. But they clearly like him more. Therefore, they're responding to him more, and they're going out of their way to go for what he wants. That's what you get if you're the general manager. That's what you need to get if you're the general manager. So whether you like or dislike the move that David Griffin made, and obviously I was not a fan of it last week, still am not a fan of what they did to get David Blatt out. I fully believe that they tanked a couple of games this season. They thought for sure that Christmas would be a bad weekend for old David Blatt when they laid down in Portland. It took a month longer for David Griffin to figure it out, but he did read the locker room correctly, because there's a huge difference. That being said, curious what you guys think and what Dan Wismar thinks about how the Cavs have been playing. Had the big win against the Spurs the other night, so we're going to talk some Cavs. We're going to talk the Super Bowl. And, hey, I know it's supposed to be Johnny Free February, but that can't count here, because we haven't had a chance to talk about the latest stupidity that idiot has done. A helicopter. That's all I need to say, is that a helicopter had to go searching for the sorry-ass backup quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. I'll tell you what, 1 week from today is the first day that teams can cut loose of players, and I don't want to hear any more about recovering value for your assets. Do you honestly think there is any value left in that asset? If you do, I've got some assets to sell you myself. 1 week from today will be the end of that clown. I cannot believe that. I was mad enough that Tuesday night at the Cleveland Sports Awards, you got Jimmy Haslam out there, you got several other people out there making comments. Well, we can rebuild the relationship. It can be repaired, the relationship with Johnny Football. There's a lot that can still happen here. And I'm thinking to myself, don't do it. Don't start going back in that direction. You could almost feel Jimmy trying to talk himself back into round 3 of Johnny Manziel. And Johnny made sure that didn't happen, because a day later, here it is out in the news. And we'll get into that. Talk about all those things and more. And Dan Wismar, let me do my little formalities here, guys. Welcome in to the Sports Fix. I'm your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers here with you, doing the thing for the next hour and a half. We're going to talk about all the things we listed above. Dan Wismar will be with us, and we are live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Maybe you're listening live on TuneIn, TuneIn's radio app worldwide, on Spreaker, Mixlr, their respective digital and mobile applications. Maybe you're listening live right on our home base, back up and running, thesportsfix.net. However you're doing it, thank you for being here live as well. Thank you to all of you, thousands of you guys. And boy, did I hear from so many of you last week. A lot of reaction in all different directions over the firing of David Blatt. all of you that get a hold of us and listen to the show 24/7 on digital delay, iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, on all of the different places, CarPlay, and the many different podcast sites that you feed, subscribe, and download the show from. Thank you guys, as always, for getting your fix. And without you, I say it all the time, man, this is just me here talking in a room with you. We are the Sports Fix, so do the thing. Be a part of the show. Many ways to do that on the phone lines, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535. Phones are open now, or you can hit us up on social media. I know so many listen to the show live on their phone or their mobile device. Makes it kind of hard to call. Facebook is wide open. About to give the phone number on Facebook. There we go. It's a Monday, baby. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE, all one word, at The Sports Fix CLE. You can also tweet with me directly at J-Rocc Daddy, JROCCDADDY. Hey, I'm on Instagram too, by the way. If you guys are the Instagrammers, and I had no clue how many people in the world got a thing for clicking little hearts on pictures, a picture world. It's a visual world we live in. So I have jumped aboard the Instagram train as well. So you can hit me up on Instagram at J-Rocc Daddy, same as my Twitter account. So many ways to get a hold of us and stay in touch with us. Tweet with me at The Sports Fix CLE, at J-Rocc Daddy. Hit us up on Facebook, facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Email us, thesportsfix at AOL.com. Bruce in the chat room said Mike Hargrove could coach the Cavs and make the finals. Isn't that the argument that many of us were making when they did let David Black go, when people wanted to say that it was just a players' league? If you really want to just strike the coaching off, I'm pretty positive that without a head coach, as I jump off track here, without a head coach, these Cavs could win the East. I'm not saying that they could beat the good teams in the West in the finals, but I'm almost sure that they could probably win the East with just the players that they have listening to LeBron James. I mean, we are talking about the Eastern Conference here. So, yeah, I agree with you over there, Bruce. Anyways, Facebook, Twitter, email, phone lines, all open. Hit us up, you guys, as we rock and roll and do the thing. Dan will be with us here in just a few minutes, and I'll go back to our boy, number 2, Johnny Manziel. As I said, there's a call across social media now. He's getting started here over the weekend for a hashtag JFF, with no longer stands for Johnny F in football. It means a Johnny Free February. The Browns fans have had it. And you know what? I don't want to hear it, because I've had it with this dude and his hashtags and his TMZ and his Swans and his Magnums and all of that. I didn't want him here to begin with. So, you know what? If you had to deal with it for a few extra weeks, too bad. There was plenty of other opportunities for the Browns to go a different direction. Now you get to suffer along with the rest of us common sense common sense fans. Don't even have to be football fans that knew better than to go in this direction with this goofball here. And it has a goofball is a word. Look, I don't slander athletes easily, as you know. I don't just make fun of guys. I mean, we'll talk about things seriously, but this guy is an idiot of the highest order. He is a jerk off of the highest degree. This isn't a guy. I had this conversation with a couple of people over the weekend. Don't fool yourself. If you want to believe the stories that he's doing it on purpose to get out of Cleveland, or that he's just doing it on purpose to give a big FU to the media, this cat was being an idiot well before he made it to the NFL. They were done with him at College Station. Let some people sell you the narrative that he was this highly popular college player. Fan base, yes, he had some excitement there. They were done with him down in College Station. He was already beginning to cause issues, and they wanted him gone. I was literally told by a couple of beat writers the sigh of relief breathed by coaches, because they didn't have to deal with him, and it would have gotten ugly. He didn't just bail for the money. He bailed because it was going to get ugly for old boy if he would have stayed around another year. I mean, look at what he did to himself. And say what you want. I get it. Some of it's not illegal, drinking and all that. What I'm saying is the number of issues in year number 1 with the Browns. Pretend that he didn't come out of college. All that's going on. You think it's, people were just making a big deal about it because he's Johnny Football and it's in Cleveland. How big of a deal would they have been making about that stuff if he was a college player doing all that stuff and constantly ending up in it? He would have Then again, he would have totally found a way to work his way back into the draft. But he may have destroyed his draft status by staying in college another year, which is why he bailed out when he did, with that rudimentary 4-play offense that he was running down there in college. Whatever, I don't know what people were thinking. I'm sorry. And every once in a while I do the I told you so, and I will do that with Johnny Manziel, because I will go back to the last show that we did before that year's NFL draft, and I said, you know what? The Browns can draft any quarterback in this draft that they want, and I will talk about it and be all right with it, except Johnny Manziel. He is the only quarterback they can draft that I want nothing to do with. And, of course, that was like the curse. That was the mark right there, man. 666, the mark of the beast. You knew they were going to take him there. We didn't even need him to run into the homeless guy. I put the Maloik on him. But anyways, look at all that first year. Imagine if he had stayed in college. So this is a guy who has issues. I've said all along, he has addiction issues, but to me, his biggest addiction issue is, God forbid, the media is gone 3 or 4 weeks without talking about me. I mean, he's addicted to celebrity. He's addicted to the media, but I believe he's just in general addicted to a good time. I mean, he's got all kinds of issues. And more than that, I'm not going to sit here and pussyfoot around and talk. I understand how sensitive it is to have drug and alcohol issues, and I'm not going to mock that. He has issues in that directions, but he also has just issues in general. I've talked to some people who go, boy, I know Johnny, and Johnny's a good guy. And no, Johnny Manziel is an asshole. At his core, he's an ass. He knows how to do good things at good times. I know plenty of bad people who do good things. Plenty of good things. I know really bad people who do really good things. I know really good people who do bad things. Life is not in black and white. But at the end of the day, the kid is an entitled, just totally self-absorbed, absolute asshole. And he has shown that in the way he has portrayed himself here and acted. You can tell me he's not doing anything wrong. If he wasn't doing anything wrong, then we wouldn't be sitting here talking about him. So while everybody else is going to sit back and do Johnny Free February, we will too. But unfortunately, today doesn't count, because I got to talk to Dan Wismar about this, because over the last week, since we left, as I mentioned, going back to Tuesday, the Greater Cleveland Sports Awards, which, by the way, was a really cool thing, and gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Jimmy Donovan, and a lot of the Indians players in town for Tribe Fest were there, and Jimmy Haslam asked about Johnny Manziel. I'm telling you, I may have choked on my food had I been eating at the moment that he said, we think we can repair the relationship with Johnny Manziel. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's done cut himself off from reality. He's sitting up in the studio, because that's what business people do. I've done it before too. You have an asset that's underperforming, but you got that hustler's ability to convince yourself that you're the one that can fix it. You're the one that can rehab it. And I don't mean rehab like drugs and alcohol. You're the one that can turn that broken asset into one that's worth $1 million, whatever. You know my point. You can clean it up. We can build it. We have the technology. So I felt like, man, is Jimmy and are these guys talking themselves into Johnny round 3? And I swear it felt like that was what I was feeling coming out of Berea for a day or two. Johnny made sure that didn't happen. I had somebody call me right away and go, see, the minute he heard Jimmy say that, because I was complaining about it, he said the minute Johnny heard that, he said, no, I got to make sure these guys are getting rid of me. They said they were getting rid of me. Now they're changing their mind. I got to go get in trouble. But this is nothing like that. Cops were called out in Texas. And this wasn't in Cleveland, by the way. This wasn't in here where the media can't handle. Remember, the media, we can't handle a superstar like Johnny. That's why everybody's so hard on him. This didn't happen here. This didn't happen in Little Hick, Cleveland, Ohio. This happened back home for Johnny Manziel. And there was a domestic incident, a potential assault with the ex-girlfriend, the same one that was involved in the incident here in Cleveland on the freeway when they were drinking earlier in the day and then driving erratically on the road. And assault was a word that was used there. Same thing here. And if you go and look in the police report and the stories that have come out from over the weekend, it does say that there were visible signs of a physical assault. However, The girlfriend declined to press charges. However, it's now been put back in the hands of the police and the prosecutors with the evidence that's there. Then there was so much concern for Johnny Manziel's well-being. And, I mean, come on. Here's where the story goes to Johnny football levels. There's a helicopter apparently involved in the search for Johnny Manziel before he was found to be okay or whatnot. There was a helicopter involved in the search for Johnny Manziel. You know what? Enough is enough is enough, and I think we know that, and I think the Browns know that, and that's why dollar to donuts. It may happen. We may have the celebration 1 week from today, live, Monday, February 8th. That is the first day that the NFL teams are allowed to begin to cut players from their roster, and I don't think we're talking about a trade. I don't think none of that exists. A week from today, Johnny Manziel can gladly go ship himself around and shop his talents to the rest of the league because he will no longer be here. And if anybody at this point, if there are any of you left who are beating that bandwagon, any of you left who are going, girl, well, look, you ran Johnny out of town, please hit me up. Please, I want to talk to you. And I'm not joking. I'm not being sarcastic. I want to talk to you. Are there any of you guys out there left on the Johnny train? I'm sure there are. Has to be. Somebody hit me up, whether it's on the email, the Facebook, the Twitter. Hit us up, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfix, CLE, email thesportsfix@AOL.com. Hit us up. Let me know. Call the phone line, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535. Yeah, I kind of was all over the place on Johnny today, and I may have even been a little bit abrasive, but you know what? All luck and all fortune being on our side, it's the last conversation we're ever going to have about the idiot that the Browns drafted number 22 a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, man. I mean, you guys know, man. I don't just come out here every day and say, oh, this guy, that guy. This guy's got to go. He is garbage. And plus, as somebody who is in, I don't know, however you want to phrase it, as somebody who's in competitive environments, in many different businesses, as somebody who's in athletic endeavors, as somebody who understands the climb to achieve, the climb to gain, to reach and work for as somebody who understands accomplishment and can appreciate what you get, you look at a guy who doesn't and you go, you have no respect. I've got no respect for this guy. And maybe he will turn it around. But you know who he is to me? And many of you may have to go look this up. To me, he's just a miniature version of Todd Marinovich. And if you don't know who he is, go look him up. Todd Marinovich was a custom-built quarterback. His father literally built a quarterback. I mean, he had the size. He was way... Actually, that's probably not even fair to Todd Marinovich because Todd Marinovich had the size, the build, the arm. Johnny Manziel has none of that. But they both flamed out in spectacular ways, and substance abuse in many ways was at the core of what they were doing. And if you guys don't... I had a fella argue with me so badly a few weeks ago that you can't prove that. You can't. I said, look, man... I've never seen one single person sent to rehab when they didn't have some type of substance abuse problem. So you can argue with me if you want. And enablers like you, I mean, there's a level of... I get starstruck, and I even get sticking behind somebody in tough times. You have to stick. I mean, you don't just bail. But then there's just outright fandom where you just, the guy can look at you, and he can have blood on his hands, and you can go, no, man. No, he was dressing a deer right at the same time. No, man, you didn't. He'll find a reason, and some of those people will. Anyways, we'll talk a little bit about this. Let's get Dan Wismar in on the conversation, and we'll talk some more about the Johnny Manziel. We'll hopefully end our conversation, and it'll be a Johnny-free rest of life for the Sports Fix. We'll talk about the Cavs picking up the pace, and yes, I see you guys in the chat room. We are most definitely with just... 18 days left until spring training gets going, 2 months or so until we get to opening day, and we know who's going into the Indians Hall of Fame. It's about time. Jim Thome, Albert Bell, Frank Robinson, those three alone. That's a hell of a class right there for the latest inductions to the Indians Hall of Fame. Tribe Fest sold out after watching the Browns do what they did, and they've hired the Harvard front office, and the Cavs had people confused last week, firing their coach in the middle of the season. For once, the Indians were beneficiaries at the box office because boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, Tribe Fest was jam-packed over the weekend. People started to get in that baseball mood, at least for a couple of days. We'll talk about all of that and more with Dan Wismar of Everybody Hates Cleveland next after the news. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Dan here on The Fix.
This is the Sports Fix.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Hey, call me Mr. Pig!
We'll call you whatever you like, as long as we can call you a fan of the Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's fantasy sports superstore, FantasyJocks.com. Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. And no matter who you root for, everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Every Sunday, all the Browns action with Bud Light beer specials and $10 hair of the dog pitchers.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. That's some fun.
Plus, every Monday night, catch the Monday Night Football action with some of your favorite Browns players. Football season is most definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo North Olmsted all winter long. Harry Buffalo, join the herd. Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit FantasyJocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. In 2 1/2 seasons, he went 101 and 112 and didn't make the playoffs. In breaking news, Suns coach Jeff Hornacek was fired this morning. At 14 and 35, only one team in the NBA's Western Conference has a worse record than Phoenix. Former Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau was a guest this morning on Mike and Mike.
When you dig a little deeper, you see that he's had a lot of injuries this year. You know, Bledsoe is out, Knight is out, Chandler was hurt early on in the year. And, it's unfortunate, but it's part of this business.
The Suns plan to name an interim coach by tomorrow. Manchester City named today its manager for next season. Bayern Munich manager Pep Guardiola will replace Manuel Pellegrini. Russell Wilson threw 3 first-half touchdown passes last night to lead Team Irvin to a 49-27 win over Team Rice in the Pro Bowl. Play will resume in 90 minutes. The wind and rain-delayed final round of the Farmers Insurance Open in San Diego. Jimmy Walker at 7 under par with 8 holes to play as a 1-stroke lead. Baylor has won its last 27 home games against unranked opponents. The 17th-ranked Bears host unranked Texas tonight, 9 Eastern Time on ESPN.
Sports Center is brought to you by H&R Block. It's refund season. Come into your local H&R Block office and let their experienced tax professionals help get you every dollar you deserve. Your maximum refund is guaranteed.
Hey, you guys are rocking with Reggie Germany, former wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills and Ohio State Buckeye. You're rocking with the Sports Fix.
Sports Fix. Who's this?
My name is Optimus Prime.
Mr. Prime, we appreciate your call. Tell me, what do you think about the Sports Fix?
There's more to them than meets the eye.
The fix is in. It's the Sports Fix.
Let's get it back in. Putting a couple of things out there as we hit the break. We picked up the tempo with that one. It's a little skid row, slave to the grind, picking up the tempo like the Cavaliers as they picked it up this past week. And we're going to talk. I want to see what Dan thinks, too, about what I was saying. Of course, I want to see what Dan thinks about my boy Johnny Football here. We're going to talk some Cavs, some Johnny, some Super Bowl picks, Tribe Fest. I see Bruce and the guys in the chat room there talking about that, and a couple of guys headed out to that this weekend. Indians sold that one out. And honestly, I believe some of that was because of, just like, again, the Cavs, which is weird because the Cavs weren't struggling or anything. They just made a decision that caught a lot of people by surprise. So in the midst of the normal Browns nonsense, and then the Cavs did what they did, I honestly think Tribe Fest may have got that last-minute bump to some people that are going, you know what? Well, maybe the Indians. Let's turn our attention to something. I mean, hell, when you got 3, that's the good thing about it. Even if it's just false hope, you can turn your attention to the next one and go, hey, these guys are going to get it going on this year. And I'm not saying that the Tribe won't. I was just saying they're the next team up in the rotation. So they may have got a benefit from that here. It doesn't always. Usually it works the opposite way, but Tribe Fest was sold out. Too, sad news in the chat room. I love you guys. Always throwing some stuff at me. A lot of times I'm ahead of it, but sometimes I'm not. My man Brett Hitman Hart, I get to spend some time with Brett over this past summer. I talked to you guys about that. Just announced here, I guess, on Facebook that he's battling prostate cancer. Actually, during the break, thanks to you guys for giving me the heads up, I sent Brett a little text here and talked to him a bit during the break. He'll beat it, no doubt, but you always hate to hear that, man. I'll tell you, that's the thing. I wish we can go in a whole different direction about that. I wish we could pool all of our resources that we spend on Super Bowls and Johnny Football searches with helicopters and all the stupid things that we spend. Hell, can we take the $57 or whatever $1 million the Browns are paying people not to coach here? Just use all that money to get rid of cancer, man. That's the one word. If you said, Jerry, you could eliminate one word, one thing, one thing from human existence, y'all know what it would be. That's it right there. So anyways, shout out to Brett, and hopefully we got some good news about that in a minute. I've got Dan Wismar joining us here in just a minute. That's right. Put it in the sharpshooter, baby. Charles in the chat room. Dan's on the hotline. You guys can keep the conversation rolling as always. Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfix, CLE, email, thesportsfix.com. We've picked up the pace like the Cavs. Let's jump right into the hotline. Dan Wismar, how you doing, my man?
I am very well, J-Rocc, my friend. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, man. We're here. We're alive. It's another month in. We're starting February, and we're moving along. So I'm good, man. I'm good.
Glad to hear it. We got a lot to get into here, Cavs and Tribe, and we might as well get Johnny Free February.
Let's get that out of the way,
though, don't you think?
Yeah, let's get that out of the way so we can start our Johnny Free February, anyways. And because I'm positive. Are you with me? A week from today, this is over. There's no more trade talk. A week from today, this is over.
Yes, I certainly hope so. And I like Tom Reed at Cleveland.com. He pretty much had an opinion column yesterday, just pretty much calling for the dismissal of Johnny and forget all this, try to trade him or salvage the relationship or whatever. Let's just cut bait. Let's move on. The fans deserve it. Hugh Jackson deserves a clean slate. He clearly wants it. And, I think you're going to have to fill me in a little bit, J-Rocc, because I lost track of Johnny when I heard about the helicopter. I thought this is just the most bizarre thing I've ever heard of. There's now a manhunt going on with the air support for Johnny. I tuned out at that point.
Right.
You said that later on he was found. This is something that was news to me.
And I don't know where. I don't know that. Yeah, I just know he was found.
I wasn't up on the very latest because when I heard that it was a manhunt with a helicopter, I thought I just left. I said no, I can't take it anymore. There's no more. Nothing else can shock me or inform me any more than. If I don't want to be informed anymore about it, I cannot be informed. So
that's what got me, Dan. I was looking at the story, right, and it had just popped up, a domestic incident, and I brushed past the line at first because it catches you by surprise. You're reading the article, blah blah blah. Charges were not pressed. There was visible evidence of an assault. Manziel's well-being was concerned for. There was a search that involved a helicopter, and then I went past it and then went back and said, "What the hell did that say?" Did that say there was a search that involved a helicopter? I looked at my son. I said, Jerry, they're looking for him in a helicopter, man. What in the hell is going on here? This is ridiculous. They're looking with a helicopter. What world are we living in now? And that was where the story took a turn for me, too. When I saw the word helicopter, I said, wait a minute. What happened? Did this guy threaten to go jump off the cliff, so now they had to get the helicopter? And was he that depressed that the woman... I don't know what happened. There's so much... What in the world? And I'm done with it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not joking. When he leaves Cleveland, you will never catch Dan and I going into the, hey, what's Johnny been doing lately conversation.
Yeah, the other thing that's twisted about the whole thing is this is the second time that Johnny's been accused of sexual assault. Not sexual assault.
Or physical.
Maybe
physical.
Plain old physical assault. And there's evidence of such an assault
with this girl.
And the overriding concern is, gosh, we hope Johnny's all right.
Right.
Johnny's well-being is what we're concerned about, not the woman that he is knocking around. But Johnny's not around. We hope he's all right. Gosh, what's his mental state like? It must be awful. The concern for Johnny after all this is just misplaced, and frankly, it's disgusting.
100% agree with that. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Here's 2 points I want to make. First off, as far as why the Browns should cut him loose, it's the exact thing that every fan out there that uses common sense complains to me about. It's the same that many of you guys have talked to us about, whether you call in or send messages. It's that, the attitude in the world that as long as you've got talent, there will always be a second chance and a third chance. And these athletes know that. Their agents know that. They go, hey, man, you're going to have to, apologize for this or that, or you may have to do a press conference, but you're good enough. They're not just going to let you go. And that's why the Browns have to cut this clown next week, the first day they can. That's part of it. Because every day after that the Browns hold on to him, you're reinforcing what they already know, which is that as long as you've got some value, some intrinsic trade value or something, you can continue to do this until the team decides to move on. They'll hold on to you. Your career won't be adversely affected except the address that you play for. And it's because teams don't do that. And I get it, because it's. And as much as we yell at the Browns for screwing up their own resources, I get the thought process of, well, isn't it hypocritical to say, well, now you're getting rid of a first-round draft pick from 2 years ago without getting anything for it? But the principle to be made is much more important than what you're going to get, which is nothing. It's not like we're talking about a guy who can get you any value in a trade. There's none.
Yeah, that's right. And let's draw a distinction here between guys that have, manifest physical gifts. In other words, let's just use the example of Greg Hardy.
Right.
Greg Hardy, a difference maker.
You know what? I don't want to use him. I don't want to use him. Let's use Terrell Owens, somebody that always caused a distraction but had the physical gifts that people always gave him.
Well, a distraction is one thing.
Yeah, you're right. But
beating up women.
Well, Greg Hardy had his was such a high level that I don't even know if I want to brush Manziel with the Greg Hardy paint. You know what I mean?
Well, that's only to make the point that talent-wise, Greg Hardy was a difference maker. Johnny Manziel is at best a marginal talent.
Yep.
In other words, so that's the distinction I was going to make.
Good point.
You might have a short list of Jerry Joneses and maybe whoever else lining up to be willing to pay Greg Hardy an insane amount of money, even given his misdeeds in the past. That's a very short line for John Manziel because he is such a marginal talent to begin with. And I just think he'll be radioactive, especially after this latest, a second incident of assault. I don't even think Jerry Jones is going to want to stomach and bring that cancer into his locker room.
Not while he's already got Greg Hardy, too.
I think Johnny is destined for a career in Canadian football. Ooh. And, we are done with him. I'm done with him. And, if we can end the Johnny conversation right now, that'll be okay with me.
No, I am totally with you. I was thinking, as you said, CFL, I was thinking, man, what Texas teams have arena football franchises? Because we may see them venture down into the Arena League for one of those. I know in the AHL hockey, they got the San Antonio Rampage, they got the Texas Stars. Maybe there's a couple of Texas Arena League teams. And here's the other point that I made with some friends over the weekend. I said, stop. And one of them is not, I don't want to say a big Johnny honk, but he was for a long time. He's finally gotten around with the rest of us here. But I was talking to some guys, and I said, forget that he's his first and last name, and forget that he plays football. Just look at everything and tell me. I know for a fact that I've had people like this around that I've seen in my life, and probably many of you and Dan maybe have as well. Tell me that in regular life you don't know somebody, we all do, who had, whether it was great opportunities, great fortune, had the nice wife, had the nice job, had the nice car, had everything going for him, whatever it was, you watched him do one thing after another, like that person who's just like Johnny except not famous, and it's not one big incident that ends, changes his life. You just watch him spiral and and people try to help and they get shoved off, and you just watch it happening. It happens to what Johnny Manziel's life is right now happens to regular people that have problems, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's the being in the mix. There's some people that just have to be at the club every night. They just have to be in the mix every night. They just have to be out there. If somebody's not talking about them on Twitter, they give them a reason to. Whatever it is, we all know people who we watched in their life slowly spiral, and nothing you could do could help them. So why people think it's different because this cat plays football, I don't get it, because that's exactly what he is. He is a guy who has lost control of his life, and he is watching it swirl down the toilet, and he refuses to accept. That's the worst part, is there's numerous attempts to help, and he refuses to accept that. And at that point, what can you do? Because you just have to, as we all say about that person we know, you just have to let them hit rock bottom. You just have to let them go and figure it out for themselves and hope that they don't kill themselves in the process.
Yeah, that's very true, Jerry. Everything you say is true. And up until this point, the prevailing sentiment and the sentiment that I have shared is, gosh, I hope he gets his life together. I'm getting beyond that now, because first of all, it's not like this guy's come from a hard scrabble upbringing. It's not like the guy's overcome adversity in his life. Big part of his problem is he's been a spoiled rich brat his whole life, has had everything handed to him. And now he will always have that money he's earned in football and the family money that he had before football to cushion his fall whenever that happens. I don't have a lot of sympathy remaining in my reservoir of sympathy for John Manziel. And he can go ahead and, have his life. And I know he's going to have a soft landing wherever,
Right.
at least in terms of creature comforts, because of the money that he's earned and the money that his family has. So I'm fresh out of sympathy for the kid.
Same here. And I think a week from now, we'll probably be on the air, or it will have happened before we go on, where we'll be talking about the end finally and closing the final chapter on Johnny Manziel. I'm closing it on this right now. There's nothing else to add to that. It
Sounds
is what
good
it
to
is.
me.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I want to switch over, talk about picking up the pace a little bit earlier. And you just said a soft cushion, and it made me think of David Blatt, because I was telling a buddy yesterday, I said, I love David Blatt, and I know he's going to get another chance, and I do believe that at the end of the day, he didn't get a fair shake here, but and I'm sure you heard what I said earlier, but he's got a nice cushion to land on. He's out shopping, he's hitting, he's good right now. Like, he'll be okay, so I'm not going to feel too bad for him right now. But did you hear what I said earlier as far as regardless of what you think, Blatt, Lue, who had to stay, who had to go, David Griffin read his locker room correctly in the fact that these guys didn't want to play for Coach A. They are playing for Coach B. Has nothing to do with the respective talents of either coach. That's what the players decided, and he did correctly read his locker room, and thus far you can see a difference. Even though we didn't see it after game one, we're definitely seeing it in the last 3 or 4 since.
No doubt. 115 points a game, 4 games. I understand the Cavs have not done that since 1992.
Yep.
It's what I read the other day. They've scored that many points in 4 consecutive games.
Yeah.
Clearly, like LeBron said, it'll take him a week to get in shape to run this way.
He wasn't lying.
And like LeBron says, he loves to run the court. And he's like a freight train, in the open court when he's got the ball in his hand. So, and Kyrie, obviously, nobody goes to the rim and finishes quite like he does. Sometimes he tries to do a little bit too much at the rim, and avoids contact and avoids getting fouled. When had he just taken it straight, he probably would be fouled and end up at the line. But that's a quibble, because with those two guys leading fast breaks and pushing the ball all the time, you've got 115 points a game is what you've got. And the way the Cavs play defense, they're going to be very, very tough to contend with at 110-plus points a game. Do you think, Jerry, that this is all a reaction to or maybe a strategy that says, hey, there's no way we're going to beat the Golden State Warriors in the final unless we can score 110 points a game, unless we are scoring 110 points a game?
You know what? Let me jump in there, because I'll tag right along with what you said by saying that all along has been with David Blatt. The same thing. I mean, I remember that along the lines of what you just said. I remember listening to, it was maybe a couple weeks before they made the coaching change, listening to AC and Fred on the air talking about that similar thing and how that's what the Cavs have been trying to do and working on in practice and getting the possessions up and so exactly what they're now doing under Ty Lue, they were apparently attempting to do under David Blatt. So that was where I circle back around. And I also throw in the fact that Lue wasn't just on the bench. I mean, he was the assistant head coach. He ran practices. He was the defensive coordinator. He was every bit 50-50 with David Blatt as far as how a lot of things were done. Not everything, but a lot of things were done on this team. Part of me thinks it's more effort than it is just scheme, because it's not like these things weren't trying to be put into place under David Blatt, but they're having more success. David Blatt is a very smart guy. I find it hard to believe that at no point, and now if I'm wrong about this, then there was some sabotage going on, but wouldn't you think if Ty Lue wanted the Cavs to make some adjustments to how they play offensively, he would have had discussions about that throughout the season with Coach Blatt when they have their coaching meetings? And David Blatt strikes me as people threw out that genius word a lot when he was hired. He strikes me as a smart enough guy that if the points that his assistant head coach, who is the highest paid secondary coach in the NBA, if he saw what he was talking about, I would think that David Blatt wouldn't go, no, man, who are you? We're going to do it my way. So I just don't think these are new concepts that are being put in with the Cavs. I believe that the effort to accomplish these concepts is much better, and it starts at the top with LeBron. He never, and I saw a couple of good articles over the weekend. Pluto had one, Livingston had one. LeBron never talked as respectfully about David Blatt in 2 years as he does about Ty Lue here in practice or in the press conferences. He has not shown the deference to David Blatt that he does now. That in and of itself is a game changer for a head coach. So how much of it is scheme? I don't know, but there's a clear difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although in terms of it's not just pure effort. It is got to be partly strategy. It's not a coincidence that they've
for
scored
sure.
115 in 4 straight games. It is a conscious change of tactic to push the ball hard up the floor after makes and misses.
Right.
And that was not the way the team was playing. But you're right about the fact that Lue's influence, you can't just pretend that Lue was just hired off the street the other day. We said that last week when the whole issue of the team not being in shape came up. Where have you been, Ty Lue? If the team is not in great shape, isn't that at least in part your job to see to it that they are and maybe raise this issue before? And I think maybe in retrospect, maybe more was made of that comment and should have been made as we kind of leap on everything that's said in the first day or two. Just how he said he was going to be not different, just better. Again, he's got to say something. He answered a question. He's on the spot. So let's not make more of it than it's worth. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, someone said the Cavs have been, they've moved Blatt because they've been playing crap defense. Well, anybody who says they've been playing crap defense, A, doesn't know what they're talking about.
That's the opposite.
And B, Lue's in charge of defense. So how are things going to change with him now being the head man? A lot of nonsensical things were said, but there's definitely a change of strategy, and I think it certainly the players are playing with a little bit more spring in their step. I do believe that there may have very well have been some tanking, subconscious if not conscious tanking. We're not real wound up to play tonight, and therefore we let the other team blow us out of the gym. It doesn't necessarily have to be a conscious thing, let's go out and lose by 30 and get our coach canned. But it might just be something more subconscious than that or attitude related than that. I'm not going to accuse the team of throwing games, but you're right. There's definitely a better attitude, and it's very noticeable what you said about LeBron and his deference to Ty Lue. Even just to talk in terms of Coach Lue said this, Coach Lue wants that. This Coach Lue wants it this way, therefore we're doing it that way.
A little bit different than
that's a change of rhetoric for LeBron James, certainly, and you can tell he's got a better comfort level now.
A little different than I don't pay no bills around here, man. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of a different response there. And what about as far as regardless of how much percentage you give, whether you say it's 20% scheme, 80% effort, flip it around. It doesn't matter. But I stick with what I said. David Griffin, you can say, and it does change the way I look at the decision that he made, because to me, I can chalk it up as simple as he was right about he wasn't getting what he needed out of what was there. And he had already last season done the put my foot down, you're going to play for this guy thing. And then it lasted for a while, and then you saw the undermining and everything. It got right back to where it was again. So clearly it was going to be a circular thing that the team would galvanize itself come playoff time, and then he could totally see the same situation happening over the summer and in the next season. And he read the locker room right as far as needing to change that, because whether you think Coach Lue's a genius or just the next guy, but whatever it is, he saw that they wanted something different, whether he knew it was that person or whether it would have been anybody. So from that, it was the right decision, because it was the right read of the locker room. Even if you disagree with the function of players running the sport. What about what I said? To me, the most powerful players in the world are NBA players. Nobody has the power that they do.
You're right. It is a players' league more so than the other leagues. The other point I wanted to bring up to you, Jerry, too, was just regarding, and this is not necessarily a David Blatt issue, but maybe even more than that, a David Griffin issue, about how the Cavs, and I've read, and I think, I don't know if it was Bill Simmons or someone else, somebody on the national NBA scene, who made the comment about how much money the Cavs have tied up in bigs. And, you can run down the list from Mozgov to Tristan to Love to Varejao. And in a league that's going small. In a league that's going small. And maybe this is part of the shift, and I don't know if we've necessarily seen Tyronn Lue going smaller in general in terms of his rotations and the players that he's got on the floor. But I think maybe there's been a little bit of that. I think there's been a little bit less Mozgov, a little bit less Varejao, and it was hard to be less Varejao than what David Blatt was using. But
right.
I don't know if they're thinking that they need to be and go smaller in order to be on the same court with the Warriors. It was obviously very heartening the other day to see them pretty much blow the Spurs off the court in a game that was really never close after the first quarter. And the Spurs are, they went small too. They went Duncanless for that game. But
right.
I think the Cavs win by double digits even with Tim Duncan on the floor. I don't think he would have been that big a difference maker in that game. But certainly they got a measure of confidence back for themselves by blowing out the Spurs. And, at 115 points a game, I don't see too many teams slowing them down. They've been coming out every game. Each one of those games, it's not like they built to a crescendo or anything. They scored 33, 35, 37 points in the first quarter.
First quarter, yeah.
Of all those games, and had 60 by halftime, I'm sure, in all of them. So it's definitely something that they're trying to do wire to wire, 48 minutes of hell, and hey, it's fun to watch for the fan because I don't see a huge drop off on the defensive end. I don't see them getting beat with a lot of fast break points going the other way, I don't necessarily see the downside if there is one.
No, I'm with you on a lot of that too, and I mean clearly you see with the offensive production that those guys have put through, and I think the biggest key is what you brought up about the first quarters. That's what I was going to get to, and you jumped on. I said perfect. Sometimes we're like right there with what we're thinking because that was a problem, and that was something that. And again, you want to look for conspiracy theories or whatever. I'm not big on that because I want to try to move forward. But whether you think that they were, I mean. One little thing that gets me is the fact that they took out the pregame introductions for a while and then brought them back after they made the coaching switch. And part of me is like, man, it was almost like you were trying to take the crowd out of the game at home a little bit because you weren't jazzing them up before the game and then you made that switch. But it was the way they came out to start. And LeBron had talked about that specifically for the first parts of the season. There were some really slow starting first quarters, and then the Cavs would come back and play better, but their first quarter was really suspect on what Cavs team would show up, and that has not, it's the opposite has been the case, as you said, with those 30-plus point, nearly 40-point core. What is it, 36 or 37 against the Spurs the other day? That's unheard of.
It was 37. I think that was a high point of a quarter for the Cavs, and I think it was also a high point of a quarter
against the Spurs.
Had given up all year.
Yeah. So, I mean, that alone shows you that there was an effort on that part, and it's a big part of it, man. And, I mean, look, speeding up the pace, and that's where I go back to this is not something new that the Cavs haven't been trying to do. Those same lines all season long. I've been listening to AC go, this is what Coach Blatt wants them to do, push the ball after makes and misses, and Fred, they got to get it up to court. But they weren't doing it for whatever reason. But that goes back to maybe just not listening to the messenger. Sometimes the messenger gets tuned out. And if that's the case, it has nothing to do with David Blatt. The Cavs made the right decision by changing the messenger because the inmates were not going to allow the asylum to go on functionally unless you did that. So from that reason, I go back to saying, man, it appears to me that at least the right move was made for the situation that David Griffin found himself in. And I don't think it was something that he necessarily wanted to do, but now I'm seeing the reality and going, man, I see what he was seeing. And he's going, hey, man, these guys don't like this coach. At the end of the day, there's something that has to change because this is not going to be be
Right, and better to do it in January than to wait too long.
Give you half a season to fix it.
Get toward the end of the season and have the transition and the change of style happen,
And if you want to say, hey, Dan, if you want to say self-preservation, say it. That's what you're supposed to do in your job, too, is try not to get fired. I think that Griffin may have seen a situation where had it gone south and he needed to let go of David Blatt in the summer, it may have been both of them going out the door as a package deal. So I think he knew, I can't screw this up either. This owner just signed me $300 million worth of players or whatever, and it's my name that's on the tag every bit as much as David Blatt's.
Right. Hey, one more thing about the Cavs, too, that I want to toss out with you, and that's the whole Kyrie Irving situation. Lots of talk lately about Kyrie. Maybe Kyrie's not the point guard for this team. Maybe he's not that good a fit for this team, and I hear it all the time. And frankly, it's a blessing and a curse to have Kyrie Irving because he's a fabulous one-on-one player, maybe the best ball-handling, point guard in the league, and a guy that can score at will, especially when he gets heated up. Inside, outside, doesn't matter, takes it to the hole, is a great free throw shooter, all the above. However, it does appear, and especially this year since he's come back, that he's something of a black hole, Jerry. In other words, by that I mean the ball goes in,
doesn't come
back
out.
Yeah, and it started to get predictable that whenever Kyrie got the ball, that was it. He was going to shoot it one way or another, inside or outside. And other teams really didn't have to worry about him passing it off. I did notice over the last couple of games a little bit more, and maybe some of that talk is getting to him, or maybe he's being coached to hey, give the ball up a little bit more. He has been giving it up on occasion. What's your take on that whole situation? I love the fact that the guy can finish and score, and you need his points. I do wish he would distribute the ball a little bit more and wasn't quite so much of a black hole type player.
And I think the Cavs, you look back at last season. It's funny you bring that up because there was, here we go, talking about the differences between how LeBron treats Lue and how he treated Blatt. Last year, the Cavs switched their offense, remember, about 2 months into the season, and LeBron started running probably 75% of the point and switched Kyrie off to the shooting guard, and that was where the famous line came when the media said, Coach Blatt signed off on that, and he goes, well, I'm past the point where I've got to run that by the coach. I can make that decision on my own, and that was when they had made the decision to switch the offense, and a big difference. The Cavs started to play better. Kyrie, in many ways, was a two-guard that handled the ball some, and that's pretty much what they've done again. That was what I was going to bring up. Big differences between what's happening with and what's happening with another coach, and you look at them trying to do the same thing. This is the same thing because they did do that last year, and it changed the fortunes of the team. Clearly, look, LeBron James, and I would argue this with anybody. I don't care who my point guard is. To me, if I have LeBron James on my team, I would prefer to run my offense through LeBron James as long as he's not the black hole. Now, if he's going to be the black hole, we got a problem. But he's such a good passer that I just think that he should always be the what everything goes through because nobody can find the open man like he does. So, I mean, I think it automatically, by default, he kind of becomes it. But that's the switch that people have been talking about this week with Tyronn Lue is that they kind of pushed Kyrie back to the 2. And I'm going, that's the same thing David Blatt did last year, by the way. Coach LeBron did last year, and David Blatt signed off on. And so it's, again, the same strategy that is now being tried. So I think that shows that they're not all trying radical new ideas, but it's the same thing that was effective last year. Kyrie gets to slash and score a little bit more because he'll have those good nights, as you said, where he can distribute the ball, but they're the rarity. And I don't know where that comes from. Part of me has always thought that comes from the years he was with the Cavs initially. I mean, he did tend to distribute the ball early in his career and have a lot of, he had crap teammates a lot. I mean, look, come on. We're talking about the team that lost 27 straight games and all that stuff, and they had to build their way back up,
We needed him to score.
Right. He was
a lot more then than we do now. But one thing, Jerry, that I have noticed is that much, and I don't remember seeing it at all last year. I do remember seeing it, I believe, a little bit in the early this season when Blatt was still around, and that is playing Delly and Kyrie at the same time, where you bring Delly off the bench and Kyrie doesn't necessarily sit down now, and especially in the last 4 or 5 games, we've seen quite a bit more of that, where LeBron will sit. And Delly and Kyrie will be on the floor at the same time.
But Delly's the point.
Kyrie definitely more into a scoring role at that point. So that I don't recall seeing that at all last year. This year, a little bit, but more pronounced in the last 5 games.
I think the Cavs I think this is what they tried to do last year, and then they switched it back. I've you know what though? I think we may have talked about this in the past. I've often wondered if Kyrie Irving's game isn't better suited to be an off guard because that's more his style. Like I remember, come on, dude from Washington, Larry Hughes. When Larry Hughes came over and he was going to be LeBron's Robin to the Batman because LeBron needed a slasher and somebody that he can, somebody that can go attack with him but play off the ball, and LeBron could, have a different weapon, and he wasn't the one, obviously, and. But that similar style, I wondered often if Kyrie. But then again, that's because I would run my offense through LeBron, and I don't mean the traditional way, but he's just such a good passer. He would be my point forward, and the league would have to adapt to the only team in the league that runs their offense through the forward.
Well, that's one thing, and the other problem with playing Kyrie as a 2 is that Kyrie has a hard time guarding point guards on defense.
Absolutely.
He certainly is not able to guard the other teams too with any degree of effectiveness, I don't think. I mean, I thought Kyrie played very good defense last year. I haven't seen that good a defense this year from him, and I would shudder if I thought he was going to have to guard the other team's point guard, because that might be a recipe for a disaster, too.
Since he came back, his defense was even worse than it was before, man. Those first couple of games, I was watching guys just soar past Kyrie, and I'm like, man, wow, he's not even giving
when they played Toronto and they had DeRozan and Lowry, they just shoot him up. I do recall that game specifically, but I hope, and maybe that's just Kyrie not being quite 100% yet.
True.
But like I said, if you put him at the 2, you open yourself up to a lot of problems on the defensive end.
And that was one of the things too that I thought would improve with the Cavs. And here's the thing, I like this aspect. I like that the Cavs are going to do this with their offense, which they need to do to be able to get out there and run from time to time. But I'll agree with, I think it was Terry Pluto I was reading over the winter or over the weekend that said, obviously when you get into a playoff series, that then it goes the opposite. And that is what I like, that the Cavs do have that ability to completely change it and say, you know what? We're not track meeting with these guys. We're going to make them beat us by getting past 80 points every night of this series, and we're going to lock it down, and they can play it. And I always thought that was what LeBron would improve about Kyrie the most, was his defense. Like when he came back, I said, man, I think Kyrie's biggest gain by playing with LeBron will be learning how to play real defense, because LeBron's going to make these guys play defense. And there were times last year where he got much better. By the end of the season there, before he got hurt, there were times that he gave the effort, at least, that he never gave on defense. But, yeah, then he got hurt, came back, the focus. And part of me worries that if the Cavs start getting into this track meet style, yes, that's great offensively for everybody to get their touches, but that's an easy way for guys like Kyrie to slack back defensively, which is fine for winning 60 games in the regular season. But when you get into the playoffs and you do switch, like the way the Cavs did against Golden State, you're going to have to do that. I worry that then he just, you know what I mean, defensively. And
playoffs where you get into 7-game series and matchups and teams can play with that and make sure I isolate him on a big guy, whether it's Iguodala or whoever it happens to be. You can get yourself in real trouble.
Imagine him and Curry.
If you've got a liability there on him.
Imagine him and Curry. You know what I mean? People talk about how bad Curry played in the finals. You're going
to have to do what a lot of teams are starting to do, and that's just run a second guy after Curry and double Curry when he gets the ball. I mean, make him give it up, make somebody else beat you, and the Warriors can do that. But yeah, you're right. That's the obvious matchup problem that Kyrie's going to have come playoff time.
But I mean, they've got a ton of time. You know what I mean? Ton of time here. I'm with it. I'm not going to sit here. I'm going to enjoy this. I mean, look, it took me a couple of days to go, okay, cool. David Blatt will be all right. He'll bounce back. It sucks what happened, but I'm still invested in this doggone season. And I personally don't care who's on the sidelines if the Cavs win the championship. I could care less. I just want to see this thing finish out. By the way, as I just got an alert, I don't know, you guys, I get these alerts from ESPN about everything, but as we're talking about it, there's an article here on ESPN about how after the firing of the coach, LeBron and those guys had a big players-only meeting and got everything cleared and then moved forward. And is kind of like along what we were talking about. Regardless of who you think was drawing up what X's and O's and who's making the big difference, that right there is the biggest difference. LeBron said, all right, get everybody in a room, and they all said, okay, I'm done with you doing this. You're not playing defense. You're not shooting right. You're not trying hard enough, and I'm not doing this, and we're all going to fix it, and we're going to make it look like it. I'm just kidding. But we're going to make it look like we were right and everybody else was wrong, and there you go. But that really just kind of speaks to it right there.
Well, you're right, and even in terms of playing defense, you don't have to be as good on defense when you're scoring 115, 120 a night. So it's there's going to be trade-offs, and but yeah, as far as the players-only meeting, certainly that was called for, if only to point out the obvious to everyone that, hey, your excuses are gone. No more. The pool of excuses has dried up, and you don't need to necessarily lecture a team that was 30-11 when they canned the guy, but at the same time, don't be looking to the bench for your alibis or for your excuses. And there have been a few changes.
As I'm reading this, Dan, it appears, and this was something I've heard, by the way, and it's the reason he was brought back this season, is James Jones, a real, he's the big stick that walks softly, you know what I mean, in the locker room.
Yeah, they call him Champ, is his
right.
name.
And I'm reading this here. He was the one that was very vocal in that meeting, especially pointing out, and this is what you have to have, and it's hard. Look, I'll be the first to admit, and I understand what a star system is like in locker rooms, and how hard it is. There's certain ways that people look at certain people, but that accountability of LeBron, stuff that we're talking about here. James Jones is somebody that has and did address that, and that was something, whether it's lip service or not, that is what we were just talking about, LeBron, the way he talked about the coach for the last week, and that's something that apparently he brought up and admitted, hey, I can do better, and there's not different rules for me, and that's it. It wasn't just everybody on the team didn't like David Blatt, and that's a point that I think I may have brushed over earlier. It wasn't just that whether they liked or didn't like or didn't respect David Blatt. By his inability to gain the respect of LeBron James and the way he pussyfooted around LeBron compared to the rest of the team, he whittled away his respect from other players. So they may not have disliked him personally, but they disliked the fact that LeBron could do something wrong and I could do the same thing wrong and you would yell at me and not LeBron. So that was a big part of it too. And I think LeBron realized that, hey, I didn't ask him to do that, but yes, I was getting catered to, and I'm sure it does tick off Mo Williams that all of a sudden he can't get back in the rotation, but I'm getting away with this, that, and this. So that was a big part of it. And if that's what happened, then that would make a lot of sense. But that shows you it is so difficult to get 12 to 15 alpha. Now, they're not all alpha personalities, but this team has at least a couple of them there. But you've got highly paid, well-compensated athletes that are at the highest level of their sport to get all their egos on the same page. And as much as it's easy to go, yeah, LeBron James is the best player in the NBA, it does not mean, I've said this a long time, does not mean that every player in the NBA likes LeBron James because of that, because a lot of times they feel that there's a different set of standards. So I think that would be the biggest thing the Cavs could have done. If this report is true, then that would make the most sense, because clearly there were issues under the surface beyond just the coach.
Yeah, and we may never know what all those were specifically. One of the things that I've noticed, and you may or may not have too, Jerry, over the last several games. Let's just start with Ty Lue's first game, the Chicago game.
The Bulls, okay.
They came out, and they were very mistake-prone that night. I think LeBron must have had 5 turnovers himself in the first half. He was being reckless with the basketball. And LeBron could be accused of being that way from the start of his career. He's always thought he could make the pass that sometimes he wasn't able to make, or that saw something that really wasn't there. A lesser player wouldn't even try the pass, but LeBron tried it, and it wasn't really there. Resulted in a lot of turnovers. What I've noticed in the last several games, and they had a almost mistake-free game the other night against the Spurs. I think they had something like 2 turnovers the entire first half. And I just think maybe Ty Lue, maybe it's his way of trying to assert himself and be as critical of LeBron as he might be of someone else, is to say, hey, LeBron, take better care of the damn basketball. Because I think over the last handful of games, we've definitely seen the Cavs be a little bit less reckless, and LeBron in particular be a little bit more focused on taking care of the ball, even when they are running a wide open, push kind of offense.
Oh, I agree. That's a big part of it too. Against the Spurs, and I didn't even get to watch that game live because I ended up wrestling. I had a show, so I was able to catch it later on the replay. But what was it in the first half? They had nearly 20 assists and 2 turnovers. I mean, that was just such a thing. And against the Spurs, who are big on forcing turnovers and the style of defense
and a very
that they
good
play.
defensive team, yeah, in general.
Yeah. And that
So
right
anyway,
away, that number stuck
it was
out.
something that I noticed, and maybe it's something that LeBron, as he is critical, self-critical, may have looked at and said, "Hey, I do need to, pay a little bit more attention to taking care of the basketball."
And I don't know if this is true. This is just me hypothesizing what I understand about locker rooms and personalities and athletes and all of that stuff. What's the old adage? Hard work always beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And a lot of times when you're really good at something, or you're in really great shape, or you're at the top of what you do, and I can almost speak to this from experience, even just looking at the athletic endeavor that I've been involved in with pro wrestling. I took years off, and you come back to it. And I'm not saying LeBron, he never took time off, but you reach a point where you don't push yourself in certain way. Enough people are telling you that you're the best and telling you that you're the greatest, and you still go to the gym. You still put the same time in. You might still put your same 3-hour day in the gym, but it might just be at 90 or 95% instead of 100. You might answer a few text messages during your workout where you might not have done that before. You might, you know what I mean? Little things, little things, the softness that comes with being a champion, that comes with being at the top of what you do, with all the distractions. You've got movies, you've got a movie to film over the summer, so maybe I just work out a half an hour less a day, or maybe I just peel back. Again, then when you think you can flip the switch, my whole point is that when you're that good at something, you feel like you've got that flip that you can just switch and it's going to come right back to you. Then it's not necessarily there at that level when you flip it, because you've kind of let the edges soften just a little bit, and you've got to get your focus back. And even somebody, whether it's LeBron James or anybody at that level, can get to that point. And part of me wonders, you look at the last few years, you look at the talk of, oh, well, what's happening to LeBron? He's not necessarily where he was. I don't think it's a physical thing. I think a lot of it, too, is there. You just simply... everything, it's just a tiny bit. But when you're at the highest level of what you do, even dulling the edges a tiny bit makes a huge difference in the final result. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it does. Because obviously the talent isn't. Obviously, when you're 31, you're not the same athlete you were when you were 21. And so the shots that you're taking aren't always going to, be as true. But, it's about focus, and it's about practice. I mean, LeBron helped his jump shot a lot when he realized his jump shot was off, and he went back and he started working harder on it.
Right.
So to your point that you've got to keep honing the skills, and or they do go away, or you lose just a little bit. It doesn't take much to take a shooting percentage from 45 to 40% or whatever.
You know what?
One thing, Jerry, one thing just floated across my my timeline. Some stats out of ESPN.
Yeah.
That are showing a comparison between Blatt and Lue in points per game, in possessions per 48 minutes, and in offensive efficiency, which is your points per 100 possessions.
Okay.
Interesting numbers. Points per game, Blatt 101.4. They average 101.4 points under Blatt. They're averaging 108.6. 7 points more under Lue. Obviously, small sample size, only 5 games for Lue. And then possessions per 48 minutes, actually fewer possessions under Lue. 93.2 possessions per 48 minutes versus 95.1 under Blatt. But offensive efficiency, a 10-point swing, 105 points per 100 possessions under Blatt, 115 points per 100 possessions under Lue. So just thought that was interesting, so I'd throw that out there as food for
Dan.
thought on.
Let me ask you then, because to me, and I'm listening. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but from what you're saying, that sounds to me like it's not, and it may be fleshes out what we were talking about as far as it's not as much the scheme as it is the effort and the actual results, because that sounds to me like it hasn't necessarily changed. If anything, as you said, slightly less on the number of possessions, but they've been much more effective with the possessions, and they've shot a better percentage, and therefore they've scored a higher number of points. That is more simply being effective at what you've been doing than necessarily tweaking the style of what you were doing, because the number of trips up and down the court hadn't changed, whereas most people would, at least now even, if you were to ask somebody, they'd probably think that the Cavs are getting 10, 15 possessions more a game, but they're not. It's the opposite.
Yeah, that's true. That was a surprising number to me, that they actually had just short of 2 possessions per game fewer under Lue. And maybe what it means, too, is that once they get the ball in the half court, they're doing less ISO, take it to the rack stuff, and more sharing of the ball and working the clock down to the end. And certainly you've seen quite a bit of, I don't necessarily say more, but maybe more consistent sharing of the ball and having 3 or 4 or 5 touches in a possession, than maybe they were previously, and maybe that accounts for the fewer possessions for 48 minutes. Then again, you can also just say too few games to be significant. To only 5 games, it's not going to be a very telling stat versus 40 on the other side of the ledger.
Absolutely. The first time they go out west for a back-to-back late-night games after a long homestand and they score 80 and 85 points a game, all of a sudden everybody will go, what happened? Ty Lue's got to go. Yeah. The team lost him. He doesn't, so you know how it goes. But as it is right now, it's a good start, and hopefully they can continue this, because at the end of the day, again, I don't care which coach we give the ring to as long as we're all at the parade celebrating it at the end of the season, Yeah, that's true. And when you mentioned David Blatt having a soft landing, I think we're still paying Mike Brown and Byron Scott, too. So, they've all got they've got a little club to go to the mailbox for the Dan Gilbert check club. Like you say, if they're having a parade down Euclid Avenue in July, then none of us are going to care a whole lot, and certainly Dan Gilbert won't care either. No, bring David Blatt, too. Give him a ring, too. Who cares, man? We can all enjoy the celebration. We'll spin some slots at Dan's Casino. It'll be great, man. So, Cavs, what are they back at it tonight, actually. Cavs are at home looking to make it 5 in a row. Who do they got? The Pacers here tonight, and that's hey, I think the Cavs, this is a good little test, because I like the Pacers, and they're only a few games over 500 this season, but I like the style. I like the comeback from Paul George. I'm not really surprised like some people are. He had a pretty tough injury to come back from, but I've always dug his game, and he's doing a good job there. They're fighting neck and neck with Chicago for second place.
Yeah, those guys are kind of in a group there with Toronto and Chicago, pushing, and we'll see what happens. The surprise team really like the Hawks. Underachieving, it seems, but it's I fully expect the Cavs to stay on this roll. I think they're focused now, and I really just I think it's going to be a fun second half, and they get this team into shape for the playoffs, and you're kind of done with your West Coast and Texas trips, and it's going to be mostly playing in the Eastern time zone here for the rest of the season. A couple exceptions, but. I'm like you. I'm looking across the alley there, Eagle Alley or whatever it is. I'm starting to look over at Progressive Field now and get ready for that whole thing. Well, you got a couple minutes to talk some Tribe?
Absolutely. We're going to get into that real quick. I don't think anybody in the NBA wants. I think this is what the new trend of high-speed offenses is. Nobody wants to play defense. Did you notice the stat? About Saturday night in the league? First time since 1991. It's been nearly, 26 years. First time since 1991 that every NBA team, all 14 of them on Saturday, scored 100 points or more, man. The game has changed, Dan, and Saturday night, nobody. They were all going out to the club after the game. Nobody was playing defense. They were out there getting their points and getting ready to head out to the club wherever they were at on Saturday night, man.
Yeah, I noticed that. There was another night earlier where there were only, I think, 4 games where all 8 teams scored over 100, but I had not heard about Saturday.
Yeah, 7 games, 14 teams, all over 100.
Yeah,
so.
the game is changing. The game is getting smaller.
But you can't convince me that being a Saturday night wasn't a coincidence. Those guys had their cars running in the parking lot. They were ready to go and enjoy the weekend there. So we'll see what the Cavs do. I was looking at the schedule. They've got a couple here this week. Should be interesting. By the time we check back, it'll be 5, 6, could be 7, 8 in a row here as they look to get rolling. And this is right around the time last year that they got rolling again. Keep that in mind as you see. This will be fun. What do we got? A week or two until the All-Star game. Oh, I think there was one yesterday. I totally forgot about it. I didn't watch 1 second. I don't even know what the score was in the football game yesterday, the little Pro Bowl thing. But got the All-Star break coming up here. It'll be a chance for most of the Cavs to catch a break. How does Kevin Love, by the way, get overlooked? I thought that he was definitely one of the biggest snubs. But real quick, Tyronn Lue making the coach. Me personally, I don't have a problem with it for this reason. David Blatt wasn't the only. It's not just the head coach that coaches the Eastern Conference All-Star team. It's the entire staff. It's a reward for your whole coaching staff for having the best record in the first half of the season. So there's 7 or 8 other guys who did their job alongside David Blatt who are also being rewarded by getting the chance to coach at the All-Star game. And Lue was one of them. He was the assistant coach. So to me, I don't have a problem as long as stop saying it's Lue who's been given this. The whole Cavs staff is just going to go and do the game because that's what they earned as a staff. That's the way I look at it. It's not a one-guy thing.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a good thing. And obviously it's a little bit of an awkward situation for the league to be in. I think they probably took the line of least resistance and said, okay, if you're willing to do it, why don't you go ahead and do it? Certainly, no complaint from here. And you're right; it's a reward for the whole staff and not for one guy. So that makes sense. And I think the league made the best of what was probably an embarrassing situation for him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What are you going to do? Have him out there? You're going to have him out? You're going to have David Blatt out there coaching the team? I was joking with some friends over the weekend. I said, what? The guy wouldn't let him coach him during the regular season, but LeBron's going to go, hey, Coach Blatt, what's up, man? Come on over and coach the All-Star game. No, what were you supposed to do? But, I mean, to me, people looking at it as, oh, this guy doesn't deserve it, it's a group thing, and there are a lot of other people on that staff who get the opportunity to go as well. And, hey, I'm sure that there's an physical, financial compensation in David Blatt's contract for having the best record and coaching the All-Star game, and I bet you he still gets that money. So let him.
Probably just tack it on to the bi-weekly.
Tack it on to what you owe, baby. Exactly. I'm telling you.
As far as Kevin Love goes, though, Jerry, it seems like, I think the perception nationally and around NBA circles has always been, on Kevin Love, that is, has always been somewhat different than what we have observed here. I think we touched on it last week a little bit. I've always liked Kevin Love's game since he's come to the Cavs. People say he's underused, he's misused. Now he's going to be used properly under Tyronn Lue where he wasn't under Blatt. But I think there's so much talk about it. There's so much nonsense talk, in my opinion, about friction between him and LeBron, or friction between him and other players, or between him and the coach, that I think the perception around the league is that Kevin Love has underperformed. And if there's an explanation for why he's passed over for the All-Star game, maybe that's it. That people think that, hey, Kevin Love, he's not having that great a year. He's not doing that great in Cleveland for all these reasons. I think the people that are closest to it, in other words, us here in Cleveland that watch him play every night, have a distinctly different view of it.
I mean, how many people, and I'll Google search in a minute, I'm sure neither one of us know off the top of our head, but how many people have 20 games in the first half of the season this year? You know what I mean? I mean, Kevin Love, even now, what's he averaging? 16 and 10? Almost 11 for the season?
Yeah, it's, who doesn't want that out of their starting four,
Right.
So I like I said, our perception is different, but I do believe that around the country, the perception is, Love haven't been able to get the most out of him because he's not averaging 22 and 14 or whatever he was averaging on a lousy Minnesota team.
Yeah, I'm actually looking that up as I talk to you. And that's too. His stats were not demonstrably that much bigger, but he was carrying the load on a garbage team there, compared to here.
Right.
I mean, I've got Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, DeAndre Jordan. There's not many people. That's it that have had a 20 rebound and double-digit scoring game this season too. So I think that's – and you know what? The second half hopefully plays out the way it has for Kevin Love under Tyronn Lue. I don't know if you noticed that in the stats, but he's about 5 points a game higher in these 5 games under Lue, and maybe 1 or 2 rebounds, but he's up near 19 points a game. And if you can get that, I mean, to me, I always thought the beauty of this offense and the beauty of having a big three wasn't so that they can all get their stuff every night. It's so that on any given night, whichever one of them had the matchup advantage was the guy that was going to kill the other team. And if you tried to double team that guy, the other ones were going to slaughter you. So you were just in a no-win situation. That, to me, is the beauty of whatever style the Cavs figure out how to play, and not so much how can we make sure that everybody gets their points and everybody gets their opportunities and everybody gets their touches,
Yeah, that's true. And the rest of it is, the depth on the team. I mean, there is no point during any game anymore where when you see somebody coming in off the bench, you say, oh, look out, here comes so-and-so.
Right.
It's like, oh, great, Shumpert's coming in the game, or, oh, man, here comes Dele, or, here comes, RJ or whatever. I think it's so much fun to watch these guys because there is no let-up. Shumpert brings nothing but energy every single night as soon as he steps on the court. And the same with Dele, really. He's going to do what Dele does, and that's going to be a net positive for this team. It seems certainly this year it's been the case. So that you got your big three, but you've got 8 more guys out there that are getting it done every night, and where when you've got your second unit on the court, that's where you're getting plus points because the other team can't match up.
You got it. Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland joining me here. We'll get to your tribe here. I want to wrap it up with them. Real quick, let's jump into the football field because we've been talking football all season long, and there's only one football game left to play. Super Bowl 50 on the horizon. By the time you and I talk again, it'll be in the books, and the offseason will have begun. You've got Denver, you've got Carolina, and I'm not going to lie, I have not the slightest clue which way I think this game's going to go because every time I go, who in the world is going to stop Cam Newton and this Carolina offense and the Carolina defense, I go, man, what kind of idiot am I to bet against Peyton Manning after he came back from this garbage season and had one more Peyton Manning performance in him and got this team to the Super Bowl? How do I bet against that guy? This, to me, is going to be a great Super Bowl. I don't think we've got a blowout coming either way. I see Bruce with the Madden call there. They've got the Panthers 24, the Broncos 20. That sounds like the kind of score we're looking at. I don't see any kind of big fireworks offensively. These defenses are too good. What do you think?
Oh, I'm with you on that in terms of the defenses and also in terms of the coin flip kind of mentality going into it in terms of how you rightly predict it. Yes, the Panthers looked dominant and unbeatable and balanced, so much so during the AFC title games. But the Denver defense is what kept them in that game and what won that game for them ultimately, I think. And they're going to show up, and it will not be easy because the pass rush is going to be the same against Cam Newton as it was against Tom Brady. And it's not going to be easy to deal with. The Broncos can get pressure with 3 guys, let alone 4, and
right.
It's they've got a good scheme, and they really threw Tom Brady for a loop, not just by hitting them and pounding them, but by dropping linebackers into zones and cutting off that short game. I thought Wade Phillips did a heck of a job. They got the pick off from Von Miller on the one play. It was a textbook linebacker drop into a zone where Brady likes to throw the ball and cut off Gronk and got that interception. I mean, that was just good scheming, and that the Broncos going to be able to do the same thing to Cam and Cam's downfield weapons. Much as I love my Buckeyes, Teddy Ginn and Corey Brown, they are not Calvin Johnson and Julio Jones. So it's I think the Panthers are going to have their work cut out for them to score points, and I think both teams probably will be in the 20s in the scoring.
By the way, ironic that you just mentioned Calvin Johnson. I don't know if you saw, but since literally we started this conversation, a lot of dropping out here now that Calvin Johnson's going to retire, announce his retirement from the Lions. Megatron, to me, let's say that's true. Is that one of the best receivers in the NFL? I know that his team did not have the success that some of the greats do, but where would you put Calvin Johnson on the big list?
Wow, I think you'd have to probably call him, top 5, maybe all time. He's just an unbelievable talent, and he's carried that team. Some Lions fan the other day on Twitter was saying that he's the second bona fide superstar that has wasted his career in Detroit. Of course,
Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Where you could chalk him up and say, wow, what a shame that the guy had to play his whole career with the Lions in relative obscurity and without Super Bowl appearances and without everything that would come PR-wise and hype-wise to a player playing on a winning team in a bigger media market.
I agree.
So,
Absolutely.
I don't know if the Calvin Johnson thing, all I've read is he's retiring. He seems sincere about it, and it's a shame because it doesn't appear to be physically broken down. But maybe he's had enough, and he's got enough money, and wants to walk away. So more power to him, I guess. But top 5, top 10 receivers all time for sure.
For sure. All right, back to the Super Bowl. You dropped that name, and I was like, I had that on my list, so I said, well, we might as well get this here. Back to the Super Bowl. I think this is interesting too. Is this the only matchup? I know that there's been other player coaches that have done Super Bowl and player in the Super Bowl. Is this the first matchup where both have done that? Because you've got Kubiak on one side, you've got Rivera on the other side. Has there ever been a match? Let me see. The other ones are Ditka, Dungy, Forrest Gregg, Dan Reeves, and Sam Weich, the other people to have appeared in a Super Bowl as a player and then as a coach. I don't think any of them ever matched up against each other. Reeves didn't match up with
interesting.
Ditka.
I had not thought of that or heard of that.
So this is the first time that you've got a pair of coaches that played in a Super Bowl and then coached and have gotten their team to a Super Bowl as a head coach. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. And Rivera, of course, 17-1 in both cases. Coming into this game,
from those Bears.
The 85 Bears only had the one loss as well. So
how about that? I didn't even think about that. He was on that Bears team that only lost the one game, and then they slaughtered the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and that's one of the best teams of all time. I think that may be the greatest defensive team in the history of the National Football League. At least that season, the way they destroyed the league, it was not even funny. But yeah, he had the one loss there, and then here the one loss season is and I'll tell you what, that's one. It's easy to say it now, but everything I've seen from him as a coach, Ron Rivera, I go, man, what do we got to do to get one of those guys here in Cleveland? I just want a guy like that, a guy who gets the game, respects the game. Everybody take a look at him. Who's not going to respect that guy? Because he'll set you straight in a heartbeat if you play for him. That's a hell of a coach there, man. I got a lot of respect for him. And I've said this before. I was down on Cam Newton, but I definitely have gotten a lot of respect for him as far as he's rehabilitated. I don't want to say it's just his image, but hopefully it's him in general, because the stories you hear about Cam now compared to a few years ago are like a totally different person.
Yeah, that's true. He's handled his celebrity very well. And some people don't like the on-field, gyrations and self-celebration. And I got to put myself in that category too. But, that aside, you've got to respect how he handles himself off the field, how he deals with media, how he gives back community service, charity work, etc. And guy's just engaging and articulate and likable, and hard not to root for a guy like that. He got a bad rep, and raise your hand if you were 21 and did some dumb shit in college.
My hands up. My hands up.
So, yeah, I think we all were there, and he certainly did, and paid the price for it and landed on his feet. But yeah. Admirable guy, and a guy that obviously is fan friendly and typical face of the franchise type guy that most NFL teams at some point are looking for their quarterback to be.
And you know what? Other players won't run through a brick wall for a guy who's the most talented or just because he's a big star. But, you hear about, like, Michael Orr had the story that's kind of starting to go out there this week about how it was specifically Cam Newton that made him feel wanted. And he was contemplating retirement, contemplating where he was going to go with his career. And Cam Newton's the one that convinced him to come here. We want you here. And got him to the place where he ended up there. But the way he talked about the motivation, and then speaking of motivation, the way everybody talks about this halftime speech that Cam Newton apparently gave the guys halftime of the NFC Championship game. Ron Rivera said it gave me goosebumps. I wanted to go out there and play, listening to this guy talk at halftime. And like I said, they won't do that just because you're a great player or just because you got stats or money or fame or whatever. But clearly he has earned the respect of the people that he plays with. And here's something interesting talking about, by the way, you hear, and God, anybody that makes the dumb comparison to like a Johnny Manziel or a Cam Newton, I just want to run him off a cliff. But you talk about how Johnny can't throw from the pocket and learn to improve it. Cam Newton used to have that same rep when he first started. This year he has got one of the biggest all-time improvements as far as percentage-wise and quarterback rating from inside the pocket compared. Even in the season, he improved his quarterback rating 35 points in the pocket from games 1 through 9 through 9 through or 10 through the playoffs. I mean, that's a huge mid-season adjustment. As teams adjusted to Cam, he adjusted back to the defenses. That's a huge level of growth. And if you're looking for those weird stats that lead you to wonder who's going to win, Cam Newton's 3 worst career games as far as quarterback ratings were against the Broncos in 2012, where he had a career-low 5.9 quarterback rating. His other 2, the Cardinals and the Seahawks. He beat both of the other 2 teams in the playoffs here this year, and his Super Bowl opponent is the team that in his career held him to his absolute worst effort ever as a quarterback. So, since he likes to avenge them against the other teams, maybe that's what's coming for the Broncos.
Yeah, that's very interesting stat, too. And, in terms of the passing stats, let's face it, as far as sharing a reputation with Johnny Manziel, nothing more than incidental there, because
that's
it. Can't compare the arms or the physical stats or athletic ability of the 2 players at all. Talk about your apples and your oranges. But
I agree.
He's got a huge arm, and really, it's to the Panthers' credit that they had the patience with him and the development, the coaching to bring him from where he was to where he is, because obviously the arm was always there. The physical ability was always there. It just took 2-3 years for him to harness it and to get some experience and some savvy, and that's what it takes in the NFL. You're not going to, no matter who you bring in. Andrew Luck didn't do it in his. He had big numbers in his first year, but he didn't consistently win until he'd been a couple years in the league.
Yep. Now Cam Newton, star rising. Peyton Manning, star as high as it's going to get. And now is this the sunset of it? Man, I don't know how you bet against the old gunslinger, because the minute you do, Peyton Manning is going to dial back the clock next Sunday, and he's going to have one more classic performance, and everybody's going to go, how did we sleep on Peyton Manning? How did we not expect him to go out like this? Because I firmly believe if they win, if the Broncos win this thing, there's no way he's not doing just like John Elway. I don't care what he said about 3 more years. If they win, he's walking off into the sunset as the Super Bowl champion. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I definitely agree. I think he should, and I think he will. And certainly Sunday he will be the sentimental favorite.
Yep.
For a large cross-section of the country, I think. Just people that would love to see that scenario play out and see him, ride his Bronco off into the sunset. I mean, that would be Super Bowl history. That would be a story you can tell your grandchildren about. So, yeah, I think certainly he's the sentimental favorite for the casual fan, the fan that doesn't necessarily have a team rooting interest going in.
All right. Call your shot, Dan. Here we go. Super Bowl 50. 50 of them in the books. Can you believe that? Half a century of Super Bowls. Who wins this one?
I'm going to go Panthers. I just going to go with my head instead of my heart. And I'm not even saying I'll be rooting for the Broncos. But like I said, sentimental favorite would be Peyton, but I just think the Panthers have too much on either side, and I just think they'll be able to do more offensively, and I think they somehow managed to come out on top.
Yeah, and I agree with Bruce in the chat room. He said either one, I'll be happy. I agree. This is one of those Super Bowls where I won't be upset. Oh, man, I wish the other team would have won. Either one, I can be perfectly all right with the story. And I think Madden's got it right. I think 24-21, I see it being a 3 or 4 point game, whatever the actual numbers are. And I think Peyton Manning has the ball, has the drive, has the chance to win the game at the end. And he'll either throw the touchdown and win it, or more likely what I think, because I think Carolina's going to win this. Thank you, Peyton. You can thank me later because you're going to win now that I said that. But I think it's going to come down to a final Peyton Manning drive one way or the other. But I think that Carolina perhaps intercepts Peyton Manning. He's been prone to that sort of thing, and they have just been disgusting with the interceptions defensively. And I think that's how this one ends. I think Carolina holds on to win, and it's the defense that does it. And we look at those two quarterbacks shake each other's hand in the middle of the field. And I'll be honest, if I'm Peyton Manning, and it's so easy for me to say, win, lose, or draw, I think I walk off after this, but it's a lot easier, like I said, for me to say that than for him. But I think Peyton's going to have the chance to win it or lose it at the end. I just feel a game that's coming down to the gunslinger with the ball and the quickest draw with 3 minutes to go in the game, you know?
Yeah, and certainly if the Panthers start fast, then it could be over early because the Denver Broncos are not a come-from-behind team in this game, I don't think. They're not going to be able to do what Russell Wilson did and come back and make a close game out of it if they're down 3-4 touchdowns. So a lot depends on how well Denver starts, how well they can keep themselves in until halftime and have a shot at the end. Because if they get down double digits, I think it's just going to be very, very tough for them to come back.
I think that's a great point too. So I'm going to stick with you. I'm going to go with the Panthers. And we'll see how it plays out. A week from today, we'll be talking about it. And because Cam Newton do it. Man, that Denver defense, I am curious how Cam Newton will react if that defense plays like they have the potential of playing. I mean, there's a lot of good sub-matchups and subplots to watch in this. Both sides, defensively, how the other team answers.
And normally, Jerry, when I'm watching the game and I don't necessarily have a rooting interest, I'm going to root for the team that has the most Buckeyes on it. So that would put me in the Panther camp.
Yep, absolutely.
With four Buckeyes starting for them, and
I kind of want T.J. Ward to get one, though. You know, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing the former Brown player grab one. Bradley Roby's over there too. You know, so
that's right. They got one Buckeye starting.
They got one Buckeye and a former Brown. That pulls them a little bit in that direction. You got, Teddy Ginn and Brown over there on the other side, a couple other guys. So I'm with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. Should be good. This is one of those ones that I don't think is an ugly Super Bowl. I think this is going to be a good one either way it goes, and we'll talk about it on Monday.
Do you have a big shebang planned? Or you go somewhere and watch a game with some people, or you stay home?
Yeah,
I've got
a group. I got a group of guys that I'll go enjoy the game with here and get out there and do some Super Bowl festivities for sure. I don't do like a 12-hour thing. Like these guys start the pregame show at 6 a.m, and they want to get the European fans started early.
You know what they say, Jerry. You can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning.
Well, that's true too. Man. That's true too. No, see, actually, I'm kind of on the no drinking thing right now because of the whole training and dieting thing. So,
that's not really a factor for you. I understand.
Come on, man! You're making me remember that I don't get to enjoy the Super Bowl as much as I would.
That's all right.
I'm sure there'll be some gluten-free.
Think about me. I won't be drinking either, so that's all right.
No, we always joke. My one buddy's got he always jokes, this is for you. He's got a bottle of this, I think it's called Tito's vodka, but it says real big on the front, gluten-free, and we always joke, it's 100% vodka, but damn it, it's gluten-free, man. So right. at least you're good to go there if you're worried about gluten. Exactly. Right. It's healthy. He's always like, look, Jerry, this is like up in your health stuff, right? And I'm like, no.
Vitamins.
No. All right, Dan, hey, before we go, you mentioned the Indians. Let's end it there. They had Tribe Fest this weekend, sold out both days, which is anytime you can put the word Indians, sold out, all in the same sentence, I'm all for that one. But the big news that came out of Tribe Fest, They're looking to set a record for fireworks days, by the way. I think they got 14 dozen of them scheduled for this year. Actually, it's just 14 fireworks games, but they've got another huge promotional schedule for this season. Lots of stuff. Lots of interesting stuff, too. That's how they do it. We get it. Lots of promotional stuff. But the big thing, the Indians Hall of Fame this year, and what a trio to headline this thing when you've got Albert Bell, Jim Thome, Frank Robinson, 3 of the 4. Jameson's the 4th guy there. The Indians Hall of Fame class for this season. And I think, obviously, Bell is one that has been missing, as far as most people, even when you're talking statues, Hall of Fames, all of that. One of the greatest Indians of all time. Frank Robinson is a legendary figure in history, let alone in the baseball world. And, of course, Jim Thome, he just got the statue. It speaks for himself. So talk to me a bit about that. Where are you at? Were you glad to see the not only inclusion of Albert Bell, but the fact that he'll be there and actively involved and all of that?
Well, I was glad to see that. And first of all, Albert has softened a little bit in the last couple of years. He's come back to town more than once. He's played in a golf outing here and there, and he's allowed himself to be interviewed by the media. So I think that the hard shell around Albert Bell has been sort of softening up here recently, and he appears to be in good spirits and jovial and amenable to media contacts and things like that. So I can't say I'm surprised that he's coming back. I saw Jim Thome the other day on TV being interviewed and saying that he hoped that Albert Bell would be coming back. I had not heard anything definitive about Albert Bell coming back, but for the occasion. But I'm sure he will. He I'm sure appreciates some of the recognition. Frank Robinson is a logical one, I guess. Even though he's only here for less than 2 years, but he did make history while he was here, and people still talk about the opening day home run that he hit, even though lots of people remember it being a lot more dramatic and than it was. I mean, people. Even Joe Tate, I interviewed Joe Tate a couple of years ago. He remembered it being a 3-run homer. It wasn't. It was a solo homer. It was in the first inning. So even the guy that broadcast the game has sort of romanticized the event a little bit. But Frank Robinson, obviously a historic figure in baseball, and is even a little bit down I-71. He's probably revered more so than he is here. But he gave a lot of his playing career to the Reds.
Absolutely. Yeah, Charles, I had heard that as well at Tribe Fest. Several of the players said that they guaranteed that Albert Bell will be there. Baerga was one. They're going to go out of their way to make him show up. Jim Thome, all-time Indians home run leader. What I find interesting still, the steroid era has come and gone, and now it's whatever you want to call this era. Albert Bell is still the only 50-double, 50 home run guy in baseball history.
Yeah, that is remarkable, and I was there watching it live in person, and it's still, that season, still one of the most amazing phenomenon I've ever seen in sports. There had to be, and I would get about 16 games a year there, so, and I, my memory is, again, I'm sure maybe 20 years old, romanticizing things a little bit, but there were so many game-winning hits by Albert Bell that I just lost track of them. They were happening about once every couple of weeks. You'd see either a bottom of the 8th home run, bottom of the 8th game-winning RBI double, or a bottom of the 9th walk-off home run double, extra base hit, RBI, something where he was winning games seemingly single-handedly and doing it time after time after time as the Indians raced out to 100 wins or whatever it was.
111 or whatever it was. 100.
Crazy. Well, the year before in the shortened season, they were 144. 144 losses. Then that 95 year, I can't remember what the number was, but it seems like Albert Bell was single-handedly winning about 20% of those baseball games. It was just such an amazing run, and then he got to I think he got to over 50 homers, and it was time. I think he needed the double on the last day to get 50 doubles on the last day of the season, which he did. Ended up with 52 homers and 50 doubles, if I recall. But just one of the more remarkable runs of continuous excellence, and just he was the most feared, hitter in baseball for 2 or 3, 4 seasons running. There was just nothing anybody could do, and it just still sticks with me is how incredible that was to watch it night after night, and I got the chance to see a lot of those games live.
Bruce in the chat room said he's still got the ticket stub from that 50-50 game. I will go further than you. I think Albert Bell is the most feared hitter that the Indians have ever had as far as overall just way the other team looked at him. And as you mentioned that, I look over to my left, and I'm staring at it right now. I've got autographed by the man himself. I've got the Albert Bell big. It's huge, too. This thing's like 3 feet tall by a foot wide or whatever. Or 2 feet wide. It's the Albert Bell 50-50 poster autographed by Albert. It's hanging on the wall here in the studio as we talk about it. And nuts that all those steroids, all that gas, and he's the only one that has done that. And realistically, he should have won at least one of those 3 MVP. If he had not been such an ass to everybody, he most likely would have had at least 1 or 2 MVPs to go along with his stuff. As it is, even with the with leaving here and everything, Albert Bell 586. That's Robinson. Albert Bell ended up with second in the Indians in home runs, second in slugging percentage for his entire career, stands 5th in OPS to this day, and 10th in RBI, and it's been 20 years since he played for the team, and he's still at the top of all those lists. So 44 deep now will be the Indians Hall of Fame after those inductions go down. That's pretty cool. And a lot of people happy to see Albert Bell in there. Indians just a couple of weeks away, Dan. Come next week or two, I think 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking while the truck is on the way down to start spring training.
Jerry, they keep talking, and I keep reading rumors about one more move.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, people are talking Dexter Fowler. People are talking Ian Desmond. People are, there's rumors abounding about, this team has one more move left in them to add some pop to the lineup. What do you think?
I hear the same thing. I don't buy it until I see it. That being said, this is when it was late December for the one, but this is when they signed Swisher or Bourne. One of them was signed in late December. One of them was signed right on the verge of heading to spring training, because that's usually the last bastion of leverage that a player's got while he's waiting, especially if he's a guy that may have the qualifying offer involved, or if there's a trade deal or something. That's usually the last little spot. So if it is going down, the next 2 weeks might be when you can expect to hear something. I don't know. Once they break out, I think that's it. So I think if they're going to make another move, it'll happen in the next 14, 15, 16 days.
Yeah, you think in the next week or two is when we're going to have to see it. One other question for you on the Tribe. Has there been a sighting of a salesperson? Has there been a TV ad? Has there been a radio spot? Has there been a billboard that you've seen? Have you seen a salesman? Have you seen anyone from the Cleveland Indians trying to sell a ticket or two for this coming season?
You're not going to like my answer, because the only thing that I saw was last week when they told me they got 17 new hot dogs. I don't know what they're doing. No, did you see that, by the way? Because they did. They definitely.
I saw several new food options that are
all kinds of new food options. Yes,
in the all new amenities for season ticket holders behind home plate. That the season ticket holders they kicked out to build those amenities aren't going to be able to use, because they're now spending more money on their tickets than they were last year, and they don't have the deep pockets to buy into the exclusive season ticket holder lounges that are going to be catering to the rich people behind home plate from now
Dan's
on.
Not mad about the displacement.
Why put 10,000 more people a game in your stadium to average 25 instead of 15 a game, when you can just soak the ones that are already there for more money? So
you can sell them 10,000 more hot dogs and make better money.
I just had to get that off my chest, so I'll let that go.
No, I do hear you, man. That's the one place, you guys. That's where you're hurting the most is there. And this would have been a good off season, because the Browns just made you go whatever, and this would have been a good time to mine the well. But we'll see. We'll see how that attendance plays out. I've got a feeling, though, that what fruit you planted in December will come to bear. Not as many full seats in March or April, May, whenever things get rolling. We'll find out, Dan, but I think we already know the answer. My man, you working on anything for EHC this week?
I'm going to have some Buckeye stuff up there coming up this week, talking about the the class of 2015, which was really unseen by the Buckeyes this year. They had 24 true freshmen this year, and only 4 of them saw the field, and even those guys in just purely special teams kinds of roles. So that to me is Urban Meyer's secret weapon for next year. It's a class of 2015 that nobody's ever seen. By the way, this Wednesday we'll see the class of 16 when National Signing Day happens this coming Wednesday, and the Buckeyes right now have the top-rated class in the country. And no matter what happens between now and Wednesday, they'll stay in the top 3 when they finally settle up here on Wednesday. By the way, Wednesday's the first day kids can commit, not the last day. So there'll be some follow-on from Wednesday, but 99% of kids are going to make their college decisions coming up here Wednesday and make those be final. So interesting to watch for people that are into the whole recruiting scene.
Sweet. You and I can get into that on Monday as well. Bruce has got it, man. The Indians are going to work. They'll get a sellout. They're going to eliminate seats until they're down to 9,000, and then we'll sell that place out every night. You know what?
Right.
That's the secret of entertainment, by the way. For those of you guys, I'm only half joking. The secret of entertainment when you can't pack a building is you book a small building that you can oversell. And once you can pack that building, you've got the demand, then you expand. So they're trying to fill a lake here with a drop of water. They need to start with a bucket. And then once you can fit all of them in the bucket, then they just take all the seats out. Once you guys show us we need to make some more seats, we'll put them back in. We're just going to put these seats back here. Let us know when we need to bring them back out.
That's right. Well, they took out 5,000 last year. They took out only about 1,000 more this year. So
I'm just
we'll see how it goes. They're already up in terms of a percentage of capacity.
I'm fired up. I don't care. Mike Brandenberry ain't here. I'm fired up just because it's almost baseball time, and the Browns beat me down again, and I'm ready for baseball season to start.
Oh, I'm ready for baseball too, Jerry. We will catch up with you in a week.
Got it.
As always, it's fun, Jerry. Talk to you soon.
My man, Dan Wismar. We'll be back with him next week. We'll be back next week. Last week of school for me, you guys. I'll be wrapping things up, and then I don't know exactly where my school schedule will go next week. I know for sure I'll be here on Monday, and we'll figure the rest out from there. So enjoy the week. Enjoy the Tribe, whatever they're doing. Hopefully they sign somebody. Get into the Super Bowl this weekend because we're going to break that down on Monday. Cavs, let's see if they can keep the pace up this week, and we'll get back Monday. Dan will be here, and we'll do the thing live. Same bat time, same bat channel, 1 week from today here on The Sports Fix. We love you, Cleveland and beyond. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week right here on The Fix.
Cold weather, it ain't nothing pretty. So much hate up in this itty bitty city. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Put your hands up in the air, everybody say yeah, 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 yeah.